My search to find my ancestors who were slaves takes me to West Virginia. I can trace 4 branches of my family tree back to these hills, including my 4th great grandparents, Joe and Sarah Bruce. This is the oldest black cemetery in the tiny town of Williamsport, West Virginia. All the colored people from the 19th century apparently are buried here, including, we think, Joe and Sarah Bruce. But black people at that time didn't exactly have enough money to leave grand or elaborate headstones. Few memorials honor the achievements of the slaves, but these women and men played a crucial role in shaping the identity of the African American community and of the American people as a whole. Until I reassemble the details of their lives, I won't fully understand the legacy that Joe and Sarah Bruce left for me. But this is an extraordinarily difficult process. Slavery intentionally cut us off from our past. For almost 2.5 centuries, this peculiar institution attempted to reduce our ancestors to objects of property. It exploited their lives for profit and did all it could to strip them of their identity. Today, however, the Renaissance in black genealogy has yielded new tools that we could use to resurrect these long-lost ancestors. I was extremely eager to investigate my own ancestors' experience as free Negroes in Virginia. A white man named Abraham Van Meter owned my 4th great grandparents, Joe and Sarah Bruce, as well as their children. Van Meter died in 1823, but in his will, he declared that my ancestors would be emancipated upon his death.
Free people of color were viewed by whites with considerable suspicion because they didn't know whether or not they had aspirations that violated the tenets of white supremacy. So they rarely, if ever, have full rights of citizenship. And they're essentially being squeezed out of the society.
Like many states, Virginia does not allow emancipated slaves to remain within their borders. The Bruces have to petition to get that permission.
The General Assembly granted the Bruces permission to remain in the state, but only as long as Elizabeth Van Meter, Abraham's widow, was alive. Genealogist Jane Ailes discovered records that tell us what happened when Elizabeth passed away. Elizabeth's will, dated 1840, deeded 1,000 acres of farmland and a grist mill to the Bruce family. But because their special permission to remain in the state of Virginia expired upon Elizabeth's death, the law required that they leave the state within 12 months. Elizabeth Van Meter died in 1840. What happened to the Bruces then?
What they did at that point is they go back to the state legislature again. They file another petition.
Incredible. 1841. Petition of Charles Bruce and others asking to remain in the Commonwealth. December 14th, rejected. That's cold. Did you find any documents concerning what happened to them next?
I can pick up the personal property tax lists, which were taken annually. And
oh, there it is, 1841, 1842, 1843. They were paying taxes every year.
They didn't leave. They stayed, and stayed for many years.
But Jane, how could somebody not notice this black family with 10 kids living illegally in the state of Virginia?
Everybody knew they were there, but you look at the list of people that signed their petition, and it's prominent people around Moorfield. So
these are all white landowners? Huh, that's amazing. So it was a conspiracy of silence?
Yes.
To protect them? I thought of this period as a period of black and white extremes, or opposites. And all of a sudden, this case creates a whole lot of gray, when white people are protecting the identity of black freed Negroes who own property. Free black people lived between two worlds. They had more rights than slaves, but they had less rights than their white fellow citizens. They were always vulnerable to racism, but sometimes white people helped them. I went back to Williamsport, West Virginia, to investigate a rumor about a supposed sexual relationship involving my fourth-grade grandparents, Joe and Sarah Bruce. Jane Ailes had discovered that Abraham Van Meter had freed Joe and Sarah in his will. But my cousin, Kim Rolls, wanted to show me evidence that she claimed cast great suspicion on the relationship among Joe, Sarah, and their owner, Abraham Van Meter.
This is a Bible that came from up in the holler.
This is just a great treasure.
It used to have a front and a back and had some other pages. I found these pages in here.
This Bible, incredibly, lists the birth dates and the death dates of the Bruce family going all the way back to the 18th century.
Florence Bell, daughter of Sanford, which was a brother to Sammy.
And it also contains an enigma.
Abraham Van Meter.
Oh, there he is, yeah.
Abraham Van Meter,
Darling.
August 3rd, 1823.
Why would Abraham Van Meter's name appear on the list of my ancestors, but Joe Bruce's name be completely absent? Unless Abraham was the true father of Sarah's children.
Kim, what did you think?
About the relationship?
Yeah,
The key word, they were property.
they were property.
And what do you do with your property?
You use it, and they used it. When I heard this story, I suspected there was something in the woodpile, that there had to be some relation. People don't just give up all this property. And Jane's a hard-head skeptic.
So we fight and we argue all the time. So,
And for her, all these white people always had pure motivation. They were good-hearted people. And I always say they were motivated by something dastardly. Jane, what's your theory about the relationship between Abraham Van Meter and Joe and Sarah Bruce?
In the settlement papers for his estate, where they have to account for all the money that came into the estate and went out of the estate after his death. And in there, it lists various of the children of the Bruces, and it refers to them as Joe's child.
If you were a slave, any owner could have, you had no legal relationship that the law was bound to respect or anybody else. I mean, you could say you were married, but anybody could violate your wife and there's nothing you could do about it.
Right.
we can learn more today about how masters really treated their slaves than we ever could in the past. Understanding these facts forces us to confront some of the most painful and shameful aspects of our family history. But understanding these tragedies is a crucial step towards the mystery of my Abraham Van Meter. To resolve the question once and for all of whether or not he had fathered the children of my fourth great-grandmother, Sarah Bruce, we collected the Y-DNA of direct male descendants of both the Bruces and the Van Meters. So if Abraham Van Meter fathered Sarah Bruce's children, what exactly would you expect to find in their DNA?
We'd expect to find a Y chromosome that would match the Van Meter males.
So my family's been waiting for 150 years. What are the results?
The results say that the Van Meters freed your slave family, but they were not freeing family.
You mean Abraham Van Meter did this altruistically? There was no sneaking and creeping, as we say, in the slave quarters?
Well, I can tell you clearly that there's no genetic connection.
That's interesting. I have more respect for Abraham Van Meter now. I find him more of a fascinating character, that he would do such a generous thing. Of course, it was in his will. Maybe he was afraid he was going to burn in hell, but for whatever reason, he did it. Masters who freed their slaves were a rare exception. By 1860, almost 90% of all the African-American people were still enslaved. Slavery forces us to confront some of the worst nightmares in American history. But doing so is a necessary part of understanding who we are as a people and who we are as a nation. Jane Ailes told me that there was one more stop I had to make to fully understand my fourth great grandparents, Joe and Sarah Bruce.
Hey.
What a beautiful day. It's so nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Now, why have you dragged me here?
We're here because this land was once owned by Abraham Van Meter, the man who freed your Bruce family.
So this was his property?
This was his land.
So you mean the Bruces lived here?
Yes. Abraham inherited it from his father in 1788. His father had two different parcels here that were adjoining. One was about 400 acres, and the other was close to 200 acres.
It's 1,000 acres that we can see. This is incredible. You know what's the irony to me is that it's so close to where I grew up and I didn't even know it was here. So do we know where the Bruces, their slaves, might have lived?
Well, probably somewhere here near the house.
In so many ways, Joe and Sarah's story was quite exceptional. A free Negro couple who owned a large farm in the hills of Western Virginia. But they began their lives as slaves, slaves who had the strength to survive. As free people, they had the courage to fight for their family and their land. They were African Americans who helped to lay the foundation for all that our people have become today. I can't tell you what a great gift you've given to me. I've always wanted to be able to walk the land that my slave ancestors walked and worked, and I've been able to walk the land that my ex-slave ancestors actually owned.